Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Time Traveler's Handbook. Today we are going to be talking about The Unquiet Dead, the third episode in the first season of Doctor Who. So let me lay the groundwork for this episode a little bit out so you know what's happening in this episode in case you forgot. The Doctor, the Ninth Doctor, and Rose, his companion, have just finished traveling to witness the end of the world. Traveling billions of years in the future and watching the planet explode. They are now traveling to Cardiff in 1869, where they have an encounter with a gaseous species called the Gelth. The Gelth threaten to end the world, and in a moment of crisis, the Doctor comments on how it is possible that the world could end in 1869. And that's really the most important part of the episode that I wanted to talk about. But we'll get to that in a second. The story in this episode revolves around Charles Dickens, the famous writer. And a lot of strange things happen in this episode to Charles Dickens that would naturally, for an author, constitute a fantastic story. But being from the future, the Doctor knows that Charles Dickens never writes this story. And this can kind of explain away some of the inconsistencies with time travelers interacting with historical famous people. You would think that famous people, especially people with a high intelligence, would be able to tell future people all about what had happened in this event, prove that time travel is real, spread the word that the Doctor exists, things like that. And you'll see this sometimes in the show, sometimes you won't see it. But I just wanted to point it out as an interesting thing that you can use to explain away some of the inconsistencies there. So the interesting thing with this episode is specifically there's a moment where the Doctor and Rose are pinned up against a wall and the Gelth are trying to take control of them. And Rose is confused because this event that they're witnessing could very well be the end of the world. But they just saw the end of the world in the previous episode. They watched the world blow up. And the Doctor makes a very important remark that the world could very well end in 1969 because time is always in flux and certain key events could override other key events. We'll talk a lot about fatalism in this series on Doctor Who, but basically there are certain key events, fixed events that happen throughout history, and those events cannot be changed. They must happen the same way that they always happen, otherwise it alters the entire course of the future. Now, there are also multiple timelines in this show, and time is always in constant flux, so something could change at a moment's notice, but these fixed events, these key events, if they don't happen, they change everything in the future, and someone could cease to exist. It's very much like Back to the Future in that aspect, where in essence, if two people don't get together and have a child, that child, if they travel to the past and interfered with that, they would just cease to exist. Now, that doesn't really happen in Doctor Who because they always find a way out of the situation, but the world could very well have ended in that moment. And that's something that the Doctor is there to protect, is these fixed events from always happening. So that end of the world that they saw in the previous episode was just one possible future for the human race. This 1869 end of the world event could have very well ended the human race right there, and that would have been it. I find it an interesting thing to talk about because really what I am trying to do with all of these shows is trying to get a picture, a glimpse of what the universe is really like, and how it operates, how you can go back in time and change something, how that affects the future. And in this show, very basically, there are some things that you can change and some things that you can't. And the Doctor, in his infinite wisdom and knowledge, knows what these events are, and that's about as arbitrary as it gets. We don't get a lot of cases where they can choose what happens in the event if it's a well-known person that they are affecting the life of. That concludes my analysis of The Unquiet Dead. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that line that he says, where the world could have ended right then and there, and it would have made total sense in this universe. Next time, I'm going to talk about my favorite episode from Season 1, Father's Day. See you next time.